For 3 years, 12-year-old Ben sat trapped in his own body, aware of everything but unable to speak or move, while everyone around him believed he was brain damaged and unresponsive. His own father kept him heavily sedated to hide a terrible secret. Ben wasn't injured in an accident. He was deliberately run down by his father's business partner, and his billionaire father chose to cover up the attempted murder rather than risk losing his fortune. But one morning, the scream that shattered the silence made Kate drop her coffee cup. But it wasn't a scream of pain or fear. It was pure joy. And it was coming from a boy who doctors said would never make a sound again. Dear friends, thank you so much for coming around. Make sure you watch till the end to uncover a secret that may save you and your family, because this is not just a story, but an eye-opener. This is how it all started. 3 months earlier, Kate Mills had walked through the iron gates of the Crane estate for the first time. The mansion loomed before her like something from a movie, all white marble and tall windows that seemed to watch her every step. She clutched her small suitcase tighter, wondering if she'd made a mistake taking this job. "You must be the new maid," said a sharp voice behind her. Kate turned to see a thin woman in a crisp gray suit. Her hair was pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her face. Everything about her screamed authority. "I'm Mrs. Hart, the head housekeeper," the woman continued, looking Kate up and down like she was inspecting a piece of furniture. "Mr. Crane is very particular about his staff. One mistake and you're gone. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am," Kate replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Mrs. Hart led her through marble halls lined with expensive paintings. Their footsteps echoed in the vast space. "You'll be responsible for the East Wing," she explained. "That includes the young master's room." They stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. Mrs. Hart's expression grew even colder. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The boy is difficult. He's autistic and paralyzed from the waist down. He can't speak. Brain damage from his accident. The doctors say he understands nothing. He just sits in his wheelchair all day, staring at nothing." Kate's heart clenched. "How old is he?" 12. The accident happened 3 years ago. Mr. Crane won't talk about it. Neither will you, if you're smart." Mrs. Hart's eyes were like ice. "Clean his room quickly and quietly. Don't try to interact with him. Don't make noise. Just do your job and leave him alone. The less you disturb him, the better for everyone." Kate nodded, but something inside her rebelled against the coldness in the woman's voice. No child should be treated like a piece of furniture, no matter what was wrong with them. The door opened to reveal a room that took Kate's breath away. It was huge, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a garden. But what struck her most was how empty it felt. The walls were bare white. There were no toys, no books, no pictures. Just a bed, a dresser, and in the corner, a wheelchair. In that wheelchair sat the smallest, thinnest boy Kate had ever seen. His name was Ben, Mrs. Hart had told her. But looking at him now, Kate thought he looked more like a ghost than a boy. His brown hair hung limply around his pale face. His green eyes stared out the window, unblinking. He wore plain gray clothes that seemed too big for his tiny frame. "Hello, Ben," Kate said softly. The boy didn't move, didn't even blink. Mrs. Hart was already walking away, but Kate heard her mutter, "Waste of time." Kate spent the next hour cleaning the room in silence. She dusted the empty shelves, made the bed that didn't look slept in, and organized the few clothes in the dresser. All the while, she felt Ben's presence in the corner. She wanted to say something, to somehow reach out to him, but Mrs. Hart's warnings echoed in her head. When she was done, she gathered her supplies and started to leave. At the door, she turned back. "I'll see you tomorrow, Ben," she said quietly. For just a moment. So brief she almost missed it. She could have sworn she saw his eyes flick toward her. But when she looked again, he was staring out the window as before. That night, in her small room in the servants' quarters, Kate couldn't stop thinking about the boy. She'd worked as a maid in other wealthy homes, but she'd never seen a child treated with such cold indifference. It broke her heart. The next morning, Kate returned to Ben's room with her cleaning supplies. He was in the same position as before, staring out at the garden. This time, Kate tried a different approach. "Good morning, Ben," she said as she began dusting. "It's a beautiful day outside. The roses in the garden are blooming. They're red and pink and yellow. Do you like flowers?" No response. But Kate continued talking as she worked, describing what she saw outside the window, telling him about the birds that visited the garden, making up little stories about where they might be going. She thought she was imagining it, but Ben seemed more still when she talked, like he was listening. Days turned into weeks. Kate fell into a routine. Every morning she would clean Ben's room while chatting to him about anything and everything. She told him about her own childhood, growing up poor in a small town. She described the places she'd worked, the people she'd met. She even brought him flowers from the garden, arranging them in a vase on his dresser. Mrs. Hart caught her one day, placing fresh daisies by the window. "What do you think you're doing?" the woman snapped. "Just making the room more cheerful," Kate replied, her cheeks burning. "The boy can't see them, can't appreciate them. You're wasting time." Mrs. Hart yanked the flowers from the vase and threw them in the trash. "Stick to cleaning." But Kate didn't stop. She was more careful now, bringing just one flower at a time, hiding it where Mrs. Hart wouldn't see. And she kept talking to Ben, even though he never responded. Then one day, something changed. Kate was dusting the windowsill when she knocked over a small picture frame she hadn't noticed before. It fell to the floor with a crash, the glass shattering. Kate immediately began picking up the pieces, muttering apologies. "Oh no, I'm so sorry, Ben. I hope this wasn't important." She stopped. The photo inside the broken frame showed a boy laughing as he rode a bicycle. He had the same green eyes and brown hair as the boy in the wheelchair, but this child was vibrant, alive, joyful. "Is this you?" Kate asked softly, holding up the photo. For the first time since she'd known him, Ben's head moved. Just slightly, but it was definitely a nod. Kate's heart raced. "You can understand me." Another tiny nod. "Oh, Ben," Kate whispered, tears filling her eyes. "You've been listening all along, haven't you?" This time Ben turned his whole head to look at her. His green eyes were bright with unshed tears. Kate knelt beside his wheelchair, her mind spinning. If Ben could understand her, if he could respond, then what Mrs. Hart had told her was wrong. What the doctors had said was wrong. "Ben, I need to ask you something important," she said carefully. "Can you move your hands at all?" Ben lifted his right hand just a few inches. It trembled with the effort, but he did it. Kate's breath caught. "Your legs?" Ben's face crumpled, and he shook his head. "That's okay," Kate said quickly. "We'll work with what we have. Can you make any sounds? Any sounds at all?" Ben opened his mouth. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, so quietly Kate had to lean in to hear it, came a whisper. "Help!" The single word hit Kate like a physical blow. This child, who everyone believed couldn't speak, couldn't understand, was asking for help. How long had he been trapped in his own body, aware of everything but unable to communicate? "I'm going to help you," Kate promised, taking his thin hand in hers. "But we need to be careful. Can you tell me what happened? In your accident?" Ben's eyes filled with fear. He shook his head violently. "It's okay," Kate said quickly. "We don't have to talk about that now. But Ben, I need to know, are the doctors still treating you? Still giving you medicine?" Ben nodded, then pointed to a small bottle on his dresser. Kate had cleaned around it dozens of times but never really looked at it. Now she picked it up and read the label. The medicine was for severe brain injuries. It was meant to keep patients calm and unaware when their conditions were too painful to bear. But if Ben was aware, if he could think and understand, then this medicine was keeping him trapped in his own body. Kate's hands shook as she read the dosage instructions. The bottle was nearly full, but according to the label, Ben should be taking these pills 3 times a day, which meant someone was making sure he took them. "Who gives you this medicine?" Kate asked. Ben's eyes darted to the door, then back to her. He mouthed a single word. Doctor. A doctor comes here? Ben nodded. Kate felt a chill run down her spine. Someone was deliberately keeping Ben in this state. But why? Over the next few days, Kate paid closer attention to the comings and goings in the mansion. She learned that Dr. Mills, no relation to her, visited every week to check on Ben and adjust his medications. Mrs. Hart was always present for these visits, and afterward, Ben seemed even more distant and vacant than usual. Kate began to notice other things too. Ben's father, Robert Crane, rarely visited his son's room. When he did, it was only for a few minutes, and he never looked directly at Ben. His face was always tight with what Kate first thought was grief, but now wondered if it might be guilt. She started researching Ben's condition on her phone late at night. What she learned made her even more suspicious. Children with autism could recover from brain injuries much better than adults. The medicines Ben was taking could actually slow down his healing if used for too long. But the most shocking discovery came when she found an old newspaper article about Ben's accident. According to the report, Ben had been riding his bicycle in the estate's driveway when a car struck him. The driver was never identified, but the article mentioned that Robert Crane had been hosting a business party that night. Kate felt sick as the pieces began to fall into place. Had someone at that party hit Ben and driven away? Was Robert Crane protecting the driver by keeping his son medicated and silent? She tried to push these dark thoughts away, but they grew stronger when she witnessed Dr. Mills' next visit. Kate was cleaning the hallway outside Ben's room when she heard voices. Through the slightly open door, she could see Dr. Mills examining Ben while Mrs. Hart watched. His responses seemed stronger this week, the doctor was saying, frowning at his chart. Perhaps we should increase the dosage. Whatever you think is best, Mrs. Hart replied coldly. Mr. Crane just wants the boy kept comfortable. Comfortable or quiet? The doctor asked with a strange smile. Mrs. Hart didn't answer, but her silence was answer enough. Kate watched in horror as they forced pills down Ben's throat. The boy tried to resist, but he was too weak. Within minutes, his eyes became glassy and unfocused again. That night, Kate made a decision. She couldn't stand by and watch Ben be drugged into oblivion. She had to act. The next morning, Kate arrived early to Ben's room. She found him more alert than usual. The medicine must be wearing off. Ben, she whispered urgently, I know what they're doing to you. The medicine they give you, it's keeping you trapped, but I'm going to help you get better. Ben's eyes widened with hope. I'm going to start giving you smaller doses, Kate explained. Just a little less each time so they won't notice. Your body needs time to heal, but it can't do that with all these drugs in your system. Over the following weeks, Kate carefully reduced Ben's medication. She replaced some of the pills with vitamins that looked similar. She hid the real medicine, planning to use it as evidence later. The change in Ben was remarkable. Day by day, he became more alert, more responsive. He started moving his hands more freely, and his whispered words became clearer. But they had to be careful. Whenever footsteps approached, Ben would slump back into his vacant stare, and Kate would pretend to be just another servant going about her duties. It was during this time that Ben finally told Kate the truth about his accident. It wasn't an accident, he whispered one morning, his voice stronger than it had been in years. Kate's blood ran cold. What do you mean? I saw Dad and the man. They were fighting. What man? His business partner, Mr. Shaw. They were shouting about money. Dad owed him a lot of money. Kate listened in horror as Ben slowly, painfully told his story. He had been playing in the garden that night when he heard the shouting from his father's study. Curious, he had crept closer to listen. Shaw said, if Dad didn't pay, he would tell everyone about the illegal deals. Dad would go to jail. What happened then? Dad said he would pay, but Shaw didn't believe him. Shaw got angry, really angry. He said he would take something Dad loved to make him understand. Ben's voice broke. I tried to run, but Shaw saw me, knew I heard everything. He got in his car, and he hit you on purpose, Kate finished, her voice full of rage. Ben nodded, tears streaming down his face. Dad found me, and Shaw was gone. Dad called the doctor, but not the hospital, not the police. Kate understood now. Robert Crane had covered up the crime to protect his business deals, and Dr. Mills was helping him keep Ben silent. The autism diagnosis was probably fake too, just another way to explain away Ben's condition. We have to tell someone, Kate said firmly. This is wrong. You deserve justice. But Ben shook his head fearfully. If they know I remember, they might make sure I never talk again. Kate's heart broke for this brave boy who had been suffering in silence for 3 years. But she knew he was right to be scared. These people had already shown they would do anything to keep their secrets. She needed a plan. Kate spent the next few days thinking and watching. She noticed that Robert Crane had a safe in his study where he kept important documents. She observed the household routines, learning when different areas of the mansion would be empty. Most importantly, she began secretly recording her conversations with Ben on her phone. His testimony would be crucial evidence. But their careful plans almost fell apart when Mrs. Hart caught Kate giving Ben less medication than prescribed. What are you doing? The housekeeper demanded, bursting into the room just as Kate was putting the pill bottle away. Just giving Ben his medicine, Kate stammered. Mrs. Hart snatched the bottle and counted the pills. Her face turned white with rage. These pills haven't been used properly in weeks, she hissed. What have you done? Before Kate could answer, Mrs. Hart looked at Ben and gasped. The boy was sitting straighter in his wheelchair, his eyes alert and focused. It was clear he was far more aware than he was supposed to be. You stupid girl, Mrs. Hart whispered. Do you have any idea what you've done? She lunged for the phone, but Kate was faster. She grabbed the woman's wrist. I know exactly what I've done, Kate said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. I've helped a child who was being kept prisoner in his own body. You don't understand, Mrs. Hart snarled. This boy is dangerous. If he talks what? The truth will come out? That someone tried to murder him and his own father covered it up? Mrs. Hart's face went even paler. How did you... He remembers everything, Kate said firmly. And now he can tell people what really happened. Mrs. Hart looked from Kate to Ben, and Kate could see her mind working, calculating. Finally, the woman straightened up. Mr. Crane will have to know about this, she said coldly. And when he does, you'll both be sorry. She turned and walked out, leaving Kate and Ben alone with their fear. She's going to tell Dad, Ben whispered, his newfound strength crumbling under terror. Then we need to act fast, Kate said, trying to sound braver than she felt. Tonight, when everyone's asleep, I'm going to get into your father's study and find proof of what happened. And you're going to help me. That night, Kate waited until the mansion was dark and quiet. Then she crept to Ben's room and helped him into his wheelchair. He was still weak from years of medication, but his determination gave him strength. Together, they made their way through the moonlit hallways to Robert Crane's study. Kate had learned the combination to the safe by watching through a crack in the door during one of Crane's late-night business calls. Inside the safe, they found exactly what they were looking for. Financial records showed that Robert Crane had indeed owed Shaw millions of dollars. There were copies of threatening letters from Shaw, and most damning of all, there was a letter in Crane's own handwriting, confessing to covering up Ben's assault and bribing Dr. Mills to keep the boy silent. Why would he keep this? Kate wondered aloud. Insurance, Ben whispered, in case Shaw tried to blackmail him later. Kate photographed everything with her phone. They had enough evidence to bring down both Shaw and Robert Crane and to free Ben from his medical prison. But as they were leaving the study, the lights suddenly blazed on. Robert Crane stood in the doorway, his face twisted with rage and fear. Behind him was Mrs. Hart and Dr. Mills. Well, Crane said, his voice deadly quiet. What do we have here? Kate instinctively moved in front of Ben's wheelchair, shielding him. We know the truth, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. About Shaw, about the accident, about everything. Crane laughed bitterly. Do you know what it's like to watch your business empire crumble? To have everything you've worked for threatened by one greedy man? That doesn't give you the right to cover up your son's attempted murder, Kate shot back. My son? Crane's eyes blazed. This isn't my son anymore. My son was bright, healthy, normal. This is just a shell, a reminder of my failure. Kate felt Ben flinch behind her, and her heart broke for him. But she also felt his hand squeeze hers, and she drew strength from his courage. Your son is sitting right here, she said fiercely. He can hear you. He understands every word, and he's been trapped in his own body for 3 years because you were too much of a coward to seek justice. Enough, Crane roared. Dr. Mills, increase his dosage. Double it. I want him so sedated he can't even lift his head. Dad, no, Ben whispered, his voice barely audible but clear enough for everyone to hear. The room fell silent. Dr. Mills dropped his medical bag. Mrs. Hart gasped. Robert Crane's face went white. You can speak, Crane whispered. I could always speak, Ben said, his voice growing stronger with each word. I just couldn't fight the drugs, but Kate helped me. She saved me. Crane staggered backward. This is impossible. The doctors said... The doctors lied because you paid them to, Kate said. Just like you lied about Shaw. Just like you've been lying for 3 years. She pulled out her phone, showing the photos of the documents. I have evidence of everything. The financial records, your confession letter, recordings of Ben telling me what really happened. It's over, Mr. Crane. For a moment, everyone stood frozen. Then Dr. Mills made a run for the door. But Ben had anticipated this. Kate, he said urgently, the phone by Dad's desk. Speed dial 9. It goes straight to the police station. Kate lunged for the phone. Crane tried to stop her, but Ben, with strength Kate didn't know he had, wheeled his chair directly into his father's path. Crane stumbled and fell, and Kate reached the phone. This is Kate Mills at the Crane estate, she said when the officer answered. I need to report an attempted murder and a conspiracy to cover it up. The next few hours were a blur of police cars, paramedics, and detectives. Kate told her story over and over, showing her evidence and recordings. Ben, though exhausted from years of medication, was remarkably clear and strong as he gave his testimony. Dr. Mills was arrested for medical malpractice and conspiracy. Mrs. Hart was taken in for questioning about her role in the cover-up, and Robert Crane was charged with obstruction of justice and conspiracy after the fact. But the biggest shock came when the police tracked down Shaw. It turned out he had been living in fear for 3 years, terrified that Crane would eventually turn him in. When he learned that Ben was awake and talking, he broke down and confessed everything. Shaw had indeed hit Ben on purpose, but not to kill him. He had meant to scare the boy, to send Robert Crane a message. When Ben was more seriously injured than he intended, Shaw panicked and fled. Crane found Ben and made the calculated decision to cover up the crime rather than risk his business empire. 3 weeks later, Kate sat in Ben's room, now bright with flowers, books, and pictures, watching him work with a physical therapist. The doctor said that with proper treatment and time, he might regain some use of his legs. But even if he didn't, Ben was already proving that he could live a full, meaningful life. Kate, Ben said as the therapist left, I have something for you. He pulled out a drawing he had been working on. It showed a girl with kind eyes standing next to a boy in a wheelchair. Above them, in careful letters, he had written, My hero. Kate's eyes filled with tears. Ben, you saved yourself. You were so brave. We saved each other, Ben replied with a smile that lit up his whole face. Later that day, Kate got a call from Ben's court-appointed guardian. Robert Crane had been sentenced to 5 years in prison and had lost custody of his son. Shaw received 10 years for assault and attempted murder. Dr. Mills lost his medical license and would serve 2 years for his crimes. Ben would live with his Aunt Sarah, a warm woman who had been kept away from him by his father's lies. But she had asked Kate to stay on, not as a maid, but as Ben's companion and advocate. "He says you're the only one who listened when he couldn't speak," Sarah told Kate. "Will you help him find his voice again?" Kate looked at Ben, who was sitting in his wheelchair by the window. But now, instead of staring blankly, he was reading a book and occasionally looking up to watch the birds in the garden. His eyes were bright with curiosity and hope. "I'd be honored to," Kate replied. As she walked into Ben's room that afternoon, she heard something that made her stop in her tracks. Ben was actually humming, a soft, happy tune. "That's a beautiful song," Kate said. Ben looked up with a grin. "It's the song the birds sing in the morning. I've been listening to it for 3 years, but I could never join in before." Kate smiled back, remembering the scream of joy that had started this whole journey. It hadn't been a scream at all, she realized now. It had been the sound of a boy finally finding his voice. And in that moment, Kate knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, Ben would never be silenced again. He had learned that even when the world seems determined to keep you quiet, there's always someone willing to listen if you're brave enough to speak your truth. The boy who couldn't speak had found his voice, and in doing so, he had found his freedom. Hey friends, thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, do well to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more. I love you all.